Salam alaikum, good evening, namaskar. Welcome to one of the most important and talked about topics when it comes to UAE, virtual assets and the regulations surrounding in UAE. Virtual assets is increasing day by day globally, and UAE definitely is in the race to become the global crypto hub. And there are a lot of initiatives that are working around by the government. There were recently summits around Dubai FinTech Summit. There was another token 2049. These are signs that tomorrow we will be working and probably paying each other only and only in digital assets. So please make sure that you take important notes and reach out to us wherever needed. The Q&A box is there live. You can write your questions, if any, and we'll be more than happy to answer. So before joining and starting the session where Zoravar and my colleague Apurva will take you through the processes, the overview of VARA, the overview of other authorities like DIFC, ADGM, how they are nurturing this and growing this, I would just want to talk about the normal things of what we do as a firm. So moving ahead, obviously anything that we have, we'll be speaking will be as per our understanding. We can have different understanding, but generally, it is similar when it comes to doing the processes of obtaining a license. We have opened more than several licenses, say 700, 800 licenses overall. Specifically, when it comes to VARA, we have been doing recently in the last couple of years a lot of work around VARA and also setups in DIFC and ADGM for crypto companies. So, just about us, this is our team, partners, Sheetal and myself. Obviously, Shweta leads the compliance and the licensing team. We have Zoravar, who's heading licensing. We have Apurv, who's also doing a lot of research when it comes to building this community, as well as he is the one who's taking care of talking to the regulators, knowing what is coming up and, decoding the law language to a simplified version. We have Tarun and Haifa as well. So we are growing as a team. We are a team of 40 members now across all the divisions, from setting up a company to doing tax accounting, compliances, corporate tax, audits, valuations, due diligence. But today, I would love to talk only and only about virtual assets and the regulations around it. So just to give you a brief, what we'll be covering today in our session, we'll be talking about what are virtual assets, who are virtual asset service providers, and what are the categories defined. How does this regulatory framework works? How is the crypto license environment in UAE? We all know, right, that UAE is becoming or probably on the path to become a global crypto hub. Then what is VARA and what are the compliance requirements? So this is what we'll be covering. Over to my colleague Zoravar to take it ahead and guide you through the process of what are virtual assets and virtual asset service providers. Over to you, Zoravar.
Thank you, sir. So, virtual assets. Virtual assets is an industry which is growing rapidly and is in many areas of our life. Like people are dealing in cryptos as well as fungible tokens like NFTs and becoming more and more popular things of daily trend. In the last 10 years or a decade, the use of crypto is being threefold. Even because it is changing the concept of money and ownership. It's not even affecting the financial sector as a whole, but as an economy. So in today's PPT, this is today's webinar, we like to cover about the steps and even the licensing procedure and the compliances which are concerning the virtual assets. So next slide would be virtual assets and virtual asset service provider. So starting with like virtual asset, what are virtual assets? Virtual assets are specifically a digital representation of value that can be bought, sold, or transferred online. So, virtual assets are kind of value or the amount or sum which can be bought and sold, transferred online. It can be used even as an investment and the payment medium, and which shouldn't include a paper money or stocks or any of the traditional ways of things. So, for constituting a virtual asset, there should be like three major aspects. First of all, the virtual assets should be digital. So digitally being like traded online through website or mobile application. Secondly, the virtual asset should have the ability to be traded digitally and transferred to someone through a wallet or a online payment, just kind of thing. Thirdly, is the virtual asset should carry some value. For the payment and investment purpose, the virtual asset should be of some certain value, or kind of like, for example, you invest in Bitcoin, it goes up and it can go down also. So this is the main essence of virtual asset, which demarcates or differentiates itself from a traditional form of money or shares. So the main essence of being a virtual asset is that it can be transferred freely and traded digitally online. So with the growth of the virtual asset, there came an advent of a virtual asset service provider, because these were the intermediaries which provide facilitates platform and services for the dealing and the transaction of virtual assets. So there are basically five kind of platforms or kind of services which virtual asset service providers provide. First being operation and management of virtual assets. So in this, they include basically that how the virtual assets can be managed, and there could be operational websites and mobile application and electronic mediums through which people can log in and simplify, deal with the virtual asset, trade with the virtual assets, and even buy and sell of the same. Secondly, being exchange services. Exchange services broadly include two categories. First being virtual assets and currencies being traded, and through like virtual assets be converted or exchanged into currencies. Secondly, being virtual assets can be exchanged into virtual assets. For example, of currencies being, if somebody bought a Bitcoin, then they can buy it from dollars or a AD. Secondly, even he can exchange the same for a other crypto, like somebody bought Ethereum with Bitcoin, or somebody buys a Dogecoin with the Bitcoin. That kind of exchange services. Third would be the virtual asset transfer services. Transfer services include, it's like providing a virtual assets kind of wallet in which the virtual assets can be transferred from the wallet to the bank account, as well as the bank account too can then be converted into the virtual asset wallet. Bank account from wallet, and wallet account to bank account to wallet, and wallet to bank account. This kind of transaction services are called transfer services. Fourth being the custody or the security management services of virtual assets. So once the virtual assets are there, the framework is there. So there it's a depository or a security or it's a safekeeping services which is required for the virtual asset. So there the custodians come into picture. So these are basically like vaults there which the cryptos and the other could be saved and the safe kept for the consumers as well the other transaction. And the lastly being the services related to portfolio and management and advisory. So what happens is that is when somebody deal with crypto, and there is a portfolio management and services with the person or the advisory services which the consultant can advise to include about the services, that this kind of cryptos are good and these kind of cryptos should be invested or not. So these kind of portfolio services similar like shares can be used for crypto also. So to sum up, there are five basic categories. First being the operation and management of platform for cryptos. Second being the exchange of virtual assets with currencies and assets into with virtual asset with virtual assets like crypto and Bitcoin. Sorry, Bitcoin and Ethereum. Third being the virtual asset transfer services from wallet to cash and cash to wallet. Fourth being custodial services like for security and safekeeping of the virtual assets. Fifth being services related to portfolio as well as the advisory functions. So, in the next slide, the virtual asset regulatory framework in UAE. So, the UAE government in 2021 came with a strategy, the blockchain strategy of 2021, where the UAE government came up with the simple solution that the blockchain technology should be used to transform the government transaction on a whole. So there, the main medium or main intention was there that more than 50% of the government transactions should be undertaken by the UAE government in this blockchain mechanism. So by following this system, what will happen is that 11 billion would be saved in transaction and documentation of the AD government. 398 million of printed documents would be saved annually, and 77 million of work hours would be saved annually by the UAE government. So in 2018, the step started. The ADGM, or the Financial Service Authority of Abu Dhabi, came up with the first regulation on virtual assets. So the FSRA, or the Financial Service Regulatory Authority, which monitors the ADGM and Abu Dhabi, all the virtual assets came up with the rules for virtual assets. Then in 2020, the Security and Commodity Authority (SCA) came with their own regulations, Crypto Asset Activities Regulation, or the CAAR, which specifically speaks about how the crypto assets can be obtained, or what the licenses and what are the compliances that need to be undertaken under CAR regulations by SCCA. Then in 2021, the DFSA, or the DIFC regulatory authority. So what happens is that in Dubai, the framework is that it will be divided into mainland as well as free zones. So in mainland and major of the free zones, the VARA, or the Virtual Asset Regulatory Authority, undertakes this transaction, or the regulatory authority for the virtual assets. But in DIFC, the rules have been followed by DFSA for the investment and the crypto tokens. So in the 2021, DFSA came up with investment token regulations, which specifically speaks about how the crypto and other virtual assets investment should be made in them, and what are the compliances for the same. Then in 2022, the crypto token regulations were implemented by DFSA, which specifically speaks about the crypto in whom and all the transaction and compliances that need to be undertaken by crypto transaction. Then in 2020 year itself, 2022, the VARA came into existence, which was a major step as it regulated all the Dubai authorities, or even the free zones, excluding DIFC, all the virtual regulations and the compliances that need to be undertaken, even the licenses that need to be undertaken should be through VARA. In 2023, the VARA, a codified rules, was published online. That was the VARA regulations for this crypto and virtual assets. Then in the same year, 2023, Russell Khema came up with a digital asset oasis, or the Russell Khema digital asset oasis was the name. There were specifically 170 activities of digital assets are there, in which the people can invest and form their companies and services in crypto and crypto only. Then in the next slide, I would pass it to Apu to explain a little bit about the crypto. Over to you.
Thank you, Zoravar, for your kind information. So, hello everyone. I will be talking about first is what is cryptocurrency? What are our basic understanding of cryptocurrency is? So, as you can see, there are three major points to cryptocurrency. First of all, it should be a digital asset. It cannot be physical money or anything else. It should be stored and traded digitally. So some of the most prominent examples that we know of cryptocurrencies are Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Dogecoins. So people trade in those, they store them, they mine them digitally. All of the process is digital. Also, there is no centralized system that is regulating crypto. There are no banks or no governments that are regulating cryptos, but it is still got traded securely and people buy and trade them securely. The third and the most important component for a cryptocurrency would be it should be a profitable opportunity for its investor. Like Joravar mentioned earlier, that it can be appreciated, the value of cryptocurrencies can also be appreciated and depreciated. So if it is getting appreciated just like stocks, so it is a profitable opportunity for everyone. Yes, it is very new right now, and a lot of people are getting expertise in how to trade cryptos and how to get a profit from them. So it should be possessed as a profitable opportunity for all the investors. Now, so let's talk about how we can start your own crypto business here in United Arab Emirates. As we all know, Dubai and the whole of UAE is getting the recognition it deserves. It is now on the global map as of the most innovative, the most productive country. So they are continuously developing, continuously changing and adapting to the global standards. So we can say that how to start a business. There are major three components of how to obtain a crypto license in UAE. So if you want to get a crypto license in UAE, so first and foremost thing that you have to do is to come up with a proper comprehensive business plan. The plan should have the company's vision, the company's mission, and all the operational details and how they are planning to start their business, where they will do it, and how they will manage their whole business. Once you come up with the plan and you choose your proposed crypto related activity, you have to submit that business plan to the relevant free zone in which you are applying. All of the free zone have their own different procedures of getting the license. We will discuss them in the further slides. So, but basically the basic process is same. You have to submit your business plan and then they will go through it, and then they will, most of the authorities will give you a initial approval to set up your business. So once you get your approval, then you can start working on your operations of the business. You can start building your office, you can do employee onboarding, and you can get your company legally incorporated here in the United Arab Emirates.
So, Apurva, I would just want to also add in here that obtaining a crypto license is not that easy.
Yeah.
Your business
Yes.
plan is one bit, but your team and the experiences around it is also very, very critical because it is anyway a regulated license, but also requires a lot of compliance checks as well. So if you or your team are not equipped with this, there are great chances that you may not need or you will not get the approvals. See, the best thing is, yes, you get an approval, right? There is an initial process, and then you go into the regulators. They ask you a lot of questions. Your compliance officers helps you, and then you get a license. But before that, there is a lot of amount involved in getting a crypto license. It's not a very ready to easy or very friendly license in terms of cost. It is a cost heavy license. Offices are mandatory, team building is mandatory, and it goes into 50,000, $200,000 as well, depending on what you want to set up. So all you need to understand before that is you speak to a right person whether you would be eligible for this or not, because we have seen that we have received 200, 500, maybe more applications, but only a handful got the license at the end. So it is always critical to evaluate at day one and then go with the flow. You may end up saving a lot of money. So that's all I wanted to add. Yeah, over to you, Apurva. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, sir. So now, as we all know that the United Arab Emirates have a lot of different free zones, mainland, onshore. So every one of them have a presents a beautiful opportunity for you guys to get a license in crypto related activities. So every one of them has their own pros and cons, their own cost benefits. So we'll be talking about the main four licenses that you can opt for. So I will start from the ADGM crypto license. So the Abu Dhabi global market has its own crypto license, which is regulated by the FSRA of ADGM. So they have their own list of activities like custodian activities, trading activities, advisory services. You can get their license in ADGM, in according to your requirements, the geography and everything else. You can opt for it, and usually the fee of ADGM goes up to 100,000. Initial fees is $100,000, and the annual fee of approximately $50,000. Now we'll talk about Dubai. If you want a crypto license in Dubai, then you have to for those two options. The first is the DIFC crypto license. As we all know that DIFC is outside the purview of VARA, so there its own regulatory authority, DFSA, has its own crypto license. Again, it has its own activities listed, and you can choose from those activities. And here also the cost of initial licensing can go up to $150,000, and the annual fee can go up to 60 to 70,000 US dollars. The third now, as you all know that VARA has been established in 2022. So the main purpose of establishing VARA was to be an independent regulatory authority that concerns the virtual assets and virtual assets trading and everything about virtual assets and businesses. So VARA is responsible for overseeing the crypto industry here in Dubai. So you can opt for a VARA license. It has a strict and rigid licensing process, which I will discuss further on. And here also the licensing fees can go up to $60,000, and the annual fee can be 20 to 30,000 US dollar. Lastly, I would like to talk about a very good and very beautiful opportunity, that is the Russell Khaimah Digital Asset Services. It is the latest development here of the crypto market here in the UAE, and it provides a brilliant opportunity for every investors to start up their business in Russell Khaimah. Like, it is only built, it is the world's first and only free zone that is built only for virtual asset activity. So they have over 170 business activities listed. You can choose any one of them, and they have a very simple process of licensing. They offer very customizable packages according to your business needs, according to your office spaces, visa requirements, everything they will customize for you. And they have three packages option. That is, one is you can get a freelancing permit, you can set up a remote company, or you can set up a full standard company here in Digital Asset Oasis. So now I would like to discuss a further bit more into detail about VARA. What is VARA, when it was established, what is its role? So VARA was actually established in the year of 2022 in March. The main aim of establishing VARA was to regulate the crypto industry of Dubai, to make rules, regulation, compliances requirements, everything which are there for in relation to the crypto and virtual assets here in Dubai. So VARA's jurisdiction is actually to all the free zones and special development zones, with an exception of DIFC that we have already mentioned. And VARA is actually responsible for an overall overseeing of the various regulation, various of regarding virtual assets. They can make their own rules. They will set up their own processes and how to obtain a license. Everything is set up by the board of directors of VARA. Now, talking about the main licensing application process of VARA, as Pratik sir also mentioned that it is not easy to get a license of VARA. It is a very difficult process. It requires a lot of information from your end. Everyone can. So the first process is the initial approval. You have to get an initial approval from VARA. For that, they ask you to fill up an initial disclosure questionnaire. It will also have two components. If you're a new company, then you have to fill that. But if you're already registered company having virtual assets activities prior to formation of VARA, then you can apply for a VARA license as a legacy program under VARA. So Dubai legacy program is there under VARA. You can apply for that. For that also, the questionnaire scope is limited. They will ask you a few questions only, but not into too much depth. But for a new company, you have to. There are more main four components of the initial disclosure questionnaire. First, they will ask about the company details in everything about the company, details of their owners, details of the shareholder, the ultimate beneficial owners, and they will also get the details of the CEO, authorized signatory of the company, when was the company formulated, everything. How do you, then the next component is the business activity. So they will ask about the business plan of the company, what activities they are going to choose, how you would go about doing your business, crypto related activity in the UAE first, and then they will also ask about the financial projections of the company, the all financial information, the growth projection and the stability of the company, the viability of the company. Every document needs to be vetted and submitted to VARA. And lastly, sign a taking with the VARA, then you have to ask license. So VARA will guide you upon any other further documents required that needs to be submitted. They may call you for interviews, for meetings, and after all the due diligence and all the application fees has been paid, VARA have the sole discretion to give your license or not. So yes, so what are the activities under which you can apply for a license in VARA? There are basically five kind of activities for which you can get a VARA license. The first and the foremost is the virtual asset platform. So if you are a virtual asset platform who's operating and managing virtual assets here in Dubai, you can apply for a VARA license under this category. And the next category is exchange services. So there are two components of this. If you are doing either one of them, you can apply for it. The first component would be if you are exchanging virtual assets for currencies. If you are getting cash in exchange of virtual assets, if you are providing services of exchanging virtual assets, and the second would be if you are exchanging it for another virtual asset only. For example, you're exchanging Bitcoin for a Dogecoin. So if you are doing these kind of activity, you can apply as under exchange services category in VARA. The transfer services. So if you are a firm operating in Dubai and providing transfer of virtual asset services, like if you are, I'm sorry, if you are transferring virtual assets from one entity to a different entity, or you are transferring virtual assets from one wallet to a different wallet or a wallet to an entity, any of these activities are conducting, then you can apply for a transfer services. The fourth service is the custody and management service. So basically custody, what it means, it is a safekeeping of others' virtual asset with you. So for example, if you are holding a client's virtual asset with you for its management and advising your client how to deal with its trading and what to do, when to invest, when not to do, you can have a custody and management license. Third is the advisory services. It is basically like a consultancy services. If you are giving recommendation or consultancy on your professional basis to anyone about their virtual assets, how to invest them, when to invest them, and how to maintain your portfolio, then you can apply for an advisory services license. Now I would like to hand over again to Zorawar for the compliance requirements.
Thank you, Apol. So, the compliance requirements under Virtual Asset Regulatory Authority or VARA. So, VARA, there are four major components which includes the compliance. First being AML compliances, second being client due diligence, third is suspicious transaction monitoring, and lastly being FATF travel rules. So, what are the components of AML compliances? The VASP or the virtual service provider needs to comply with the AML and the CFT laws prevalent in the country and VARAs also, including the FATF as well as the other UAE regulations which are applicable on them for the AML, as well as they should do like there should be framework, there should be compliances, the regular checks of the clients, even there should be audit and AML and CFT control system should be in place before any transaction and after the transaction. Next being a client due diligence. So the next important step is that the client due diligence need to be happen. Like if somebody and there should be a risk-based approach which should be undertaken for due diligence of the client. Like when the client comes to our organization or a batch service provider, she should take the UBO or the identification of the client or the KYC of the client and verify the client's details, and even checks the PEP checks and the other checks need to be undertaken before. And even if there is some suspicious or any kind of transaction, then we need to report it to FIU and VARA. So next being the suspicious transaction monitoring. So one of the important step is that the VAS must employ a method, and there should be a MLRO on the compliance officer which should regularly check about the STR or the suspicious transaction and report the same to UAE and UAE FIU as well as VARA, because to curb the this AML and money laundering as well as the terrorist financing activities. So finally, being the FATF travel rules. So it's basically VAS must obtain and hold a beneficiary information of any transaction exceeding 3,500 AED, because it's a risk-based approach. So any transaction or due diligence on the counterparty's part, so these transactions need to be reported to VARA as well as in the regulatory framework on regular basis. In addition to the above this, there is a crypto asset activity regulation CAR. So in brief, it states about the five major points which should be covered. Like there should be a solid AML and CFT compliance framework which should be there. So the VARA, apart from VARA, there is a CAR rules that need to be followed, which is applicable on the complete UAE or Dubai file, more specifically. So there are five basic rules or the frameworks that need to be undertaken. Is that firstly being the AML and the CFT compliance framework should be implemented. by the VASP service provider. Second, being there should be policies and procedures and the AML KYC monitoring on the daily basis that need to be undertaken by the VASP service provider. Third, being there should be deposit and withdrawals through a designated bank only, and no cash transaction should be undertaken, and any high value transaction should be reported to the FIU and VARA, and even the on the GoML portal. Fourth being the SCA must regularly check about any high value transaction should be approved by SCA for foreign institution. If some there foreign institution invest in this country, so those high value transactions should be approved by SCA in prior basis. Lastly, being there should be a traceable link between the crypto as well as the person investing in. Just like UBO, the ultimate beneficial owner or the ultimate ownership of the crypto should be traced beforehand if somebody is not a PEP or any kind of person whose investment money could be like money laundering and the terrorist financing kind of activities. Next is the ADGM compliances. ADGM compliances being there are also four major components being AML, CFT, tax. Next being the technology governance, fourth being consumer protection, and lastly being the exchange type activities. So in AML, CTF, and tax compliances. So there is the FSRA AML rulebook. They specifically mentioned that the virtual asset entity need to there is an obligation on them to undertake due diligence as well as proper policies and procedures should be there, and all kind of MLRO and other transactions need to be undertaken for them. So the AML and the rules and regulations should be followed accordingly. In addition to that, there should be FATCA or Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act that should be entered by USA. By there is a treaty between US government and UAE government that any kind of tax transaction that needs to be that's undertaken between a US entity who's invest in UAE, the reporting of same should be done through common reporting standards or the CRS system. So there the GIN number and everything is important. Next being the technology governance. There should be a proper system in place in because the goods because the virtual assets needs to be stored on virtual asset wallet as well as there should be funds and there should be clients money involved of high value. So there should be a technology governance system of where the virtual asset is with origin or what is the designation where destination where the virtual asset has been stored. So there should be a risk and security management policy. There should be custodians policies in such a way that the technology, phishing, and kind of activity shouldn't take in on. Thirdly, being the consumer protection. So it's a consumer based, like an individual or a retail customer or even a big customer should invest in the virtual assets. So the virtual assets should be very consumer protective or should be guidelines should be such that the consumer shouldn't be harmed or disarmed with this fact. So the virtual asset generally is there should be policies and procedures. I mean, even there should be disclosures in the policies and procedures about how the customer should be protected and what are the steps if some get bribed by any transaction and how should be reporting should be done and how in the policies if some future actions happen. So what are the counter for them? So lastly, in the exchange type activities. Exchange type activities of virtual asset is that a multilateral trading facilities. So MTF is specifically if some there should be multilateral trading happening. So exchange is set up for dealing with the virtual assets like they are dealing with crypto or even NFTs. So there should be proper checks and regular monitoring and audits of those exchange and there should be regular there should be due diligence and all the compliances and need to be reported and all should be in as per the laws of ADGM. Next slide being anti-bribery and corruption rules. So there also the four major components being the establish a policy, training and disclosure, investigate and report, and final is the responsibility. So establish a policy being that there should be an anti-bribery and corruption policy and there should be a zero tolerance for bribery in every VASP service provider. So sorry. So the anti-bribery and corruption policy specifically states that there should be zero tolerance for any bribery activity that needs to be undertaken, and there should be reporting mechanism in the same way if somebody does that and what action should be taken by them. So next being the training and disclosure. So the VAS service provider should regularly guide and train this staff, board, and as well as other employees of the company about the anti-bribery and corruption, and should regularly train them and like publicly speaks about the fact that there should be zero tolerance on if any kind of the bribery and corruption practices take undertaken in the VAS organization or any external organization. Fourth being the investigation and report. There should be inspection of articles as well as other regular basis audit in the vast service providers activities, that there should be governance or what are the legal compliances that should be undertaken by this, and there should be annual or biannual reports that should be made by the compliance officer, that there are no lacuna or any glitches which is left in that. Fourth being the responsibility. The board has the over responsibility. There are like four components being the board, compliance officer, and the policy maker. So all the three needs to be undertake such in such a way that if any any glitch happens while dealing with the transaction, it can be relayed back, and even the onus of such if any such laguna happens should be dependent on the board, as well as the consumer shouldn't face the brunt of it. Next slide. About next slide. About next.
Yeah, there seems to be some connection error. Just give us a second. Apurv, can you move to next slide? Yeah.
So we'll thank to conclude. So we'll open the house for question and answers. If any, we'll be happy to help.
So we have one interesting question. What would be the primary difference in setting up a virtual asset in VARA or ADGM? So technically, if you ask me, the process, the length, everything remains same. But yeah, there is a possibility that, when you try and obtain the VARA license, right, that may come a little earlier. But apart from that, Zoravar and Apurv, if you want to add something to that.
Yeah, I would like to say that procedure-wise, as sir mentioned, there are not much difference. It depends upon your business requirements and the geography of it. Obviously, all of them have you can from a primary difference, I can say the cost can be one difference. Obtaining a license of VARA is actually much cheaper than obtaining a license of ADGM. So if cost is a factor towards you, so VARA can be a good opportunity for you. And again, VARA can be a little bit lengthy process, but both of them do their due diligence, and both of them will do scrutinize your business, and then only will give you a license. The main difference from me is the cost only.
There can be an interesting difference as well, because all the fund managers, all the fund regulated licenses which are operating from ADGM can potentially be eligible for 0% corporate tax, but for VARA, because it is in mainland, it may not be available. So that these are few primarily differences that may happen. But apart from that, obviously, if cost is a factor, that's one thing. Otherwise, it is more or less the same. Having a license in RAC DOA license, does VARA license is required. So RAC DOA is a separate authority and VARA is a separate authority. So yes, you will not need VARA until and unless there are activities which are not covered by RAC DOA. Otherwise, RAC DOA is itself an authority who will give you all the licenses to work. I hope that clarifies. But any other questions, if anyone has, feel free to drop us an email or reach out to us. All our details probably is there in the next slide. You can reach out to us anytime, and we will be happy to help you, assist you, and guide you wherever needed. So yeah, there are few more things that are coming up from few other colleagues. They are saying we notice that firms are getting initial approval, struggle later. What are those factors? So, Shruti, as I explained, right, and as the team explained, initial approval is not that much of a problem, right? Because you want to set up here, your business plan will get you the initial approval, your questionnaire will get you the initial approval. But what is more important is how the team is, how compliant you are, what is your experience, whether you have properly, have your compliance officer in place, your board in place, your FOs in place, your auditors in place. So again, what matters is the holistic view. If someone like me tomorrow wants to set up a crypto license, unfortunately, I may not be able to get it because I have no background about it, right? I have no understanding about it. So initial approval is fine, but when you go through the regulators, they have an interview, personal interview with the team who's forming it, right? And if you're not able to answer the questions, which is important, they may not give you the license. So these are struggles that keep happening. Obviously, apart from that, there are compliance officers, MLRO officers who guide you. They obviously tell you what has to be done, but it is not an easy process. And I hope, those are little bits and pieces that is very important. Can you
Yeah, I
please
would like to
essentially
also.
draw? Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, yes, for that question, as sir mentioned, the initial approval is basically submission of your plans. But to get the license, it's all about the execution of that plans. How well you execute those plans, that will depend upon, that will be a major factor in you getting that license.
And even, I mean, one more person has asked this, that what are the major risks, right? These are the risks. You may not end up getting a license yet spending, $100,000, so there are no risks as such before the license. Once you obtain the license, then the risks are different. Whether AML is in check, whether the investors are onboarded properly or not, whether all your compliances that you're doing are done or not, because then there are hefty fines which are, regulators apply. So you need to be careful pre incorporation as well as post incorporation. So these are very important. Obviously, there are a lot of nuances when it comes to storage. There are a lot of nuances when it comes to audits. So we have covered in brief, these important aspects, but everything from data privacy to data to technology that is being used to how strong is your data privacy, how strong is your technology, because data protection is also a form which is important once you file this. So all of that is very critical throughout this journey. And I think few people are asking what are the criteria when VASP must go for POR assets to be audited. See, honestly, there's no criteria as such. You'll need to get it audited. If you don't get it audited, the next year probably when you go for renewal, they may cause you some challenges, right? Or they may tell you about those penalties that is applicable. So you need to take care of all of these things once you set up this entities. From a technology and infrastructure perspective, what are the aspects to be considered so that? Yeah. So see, very important question, right? I was covering about technology and the infrastructure as well. So what are the important perspectives to be considered is how strong is your internal tech team, right? Because data, technology as well as data, which is privacy, infrastructure, all of this will be important. So have you built in that team? Do the client's team have these benefits? And if they don't, then you need to tell them to outsource and get a technology partner who can help, so that is very important. Again, I would never ever recommend directly going through, all the processes. You need to first speak to the authorities wherever you are applying, whether it is DIFC, ADGM, speak to the authorities whether are we even ready to get this approval, right? Otherwise, not. There are a lot of ways you can start small. Say, for example, you start small just by proprietary crypto trading and then grow it to a crypto license, right? Because then you need to test your market and then go big. So these are important aspects. But any data leaks, any data compromise, any infrastructural compromise will cause you problems. So we need to understand as a team as well as an outsourced team, because even the outsourced team will be grilled by the authorities, right? So whether they are all in check or not, and not just technology and infrastructure, Shruti, even your for that matter, even your 5-member team or 4-member team who will be doing this activity day in, day out, do they have these capabilities to even take care of such things? So it is very critical to understand all the aspects. Yeah, you can advise your clients to always have a dialogue. Obviously, on behalf of the clients, you can go to the authorities and have a dialogue that this is the business plan, these are the background of the people who are wanting to start, can they get the approval on the long run, right? Because you need a lot of guidance throughout the process. So that's the steps that are important. And post approval, whether initial post initial approval, obviously you will be grilled in terms of your satisfying all the in-principle conditions, as well as appointing all the needed persons, plus training, plus taking the trainings, giving the interviews. And these are the next steps. And post this, if thankfully, if you get a license, then the clock ticks, right? Because getting these licenses are easy, but then later on the costs have to be mindful. So you need to make sure that from day one, you start the things right and you know what has to be done. So and it's not a small process, it's a 3 to 6 months minimum, and it can extend to 9 months, a year also. So it's not a small process. So you need patience to deal with authorities, to answer all those questions. A lot of times you see, in a client comes to us, we give them a timeline of 6 months and they say why it is extending to 8 months, because you have to consider that the authorities may have few more questions before finalizing it, right? So the timelines are also not very sure when it comes to setup. So apart from just the paperwork, it is important that we all take care of the mandatory requirements as well as the optional requirements. See, a lot of people ask me at times, only mandatory things were 5. We did not make any note for the optional things. Now, if you do not take care of the optional things, it may cause a delay again for 15-20 days or a month. So it's important that if 8 bullet points are given, you take care of all the 8 bullet points of the in-principle letter and finalize yourself. And that's where I say that you need a strong team of yourself, as well as a strong team whom you're going to onboard from. For example, compliance officer, very, very critical. That person will play a lot of importance to this setup. He will be guiding you, he will give you trainings, he will be there alongside. For example, second person who's very important, if you do not have a CFO, you will need a CFO, right? So all of these critical small aspects you need to take care once you are setting up. So I hope that clarifies. Any other questions, feel free to reach out to us. We are always available. Thank you so much for attending our webinar. We'll be coming up with a lot more webinars. As I explained also, we are a comprehensive financial service firm. Our intention is to spread all the regular updates and importance from the aspect of licensing, taxes, compliances. So happy to help, and thank you so much for joining. Stay connected, stay tuned. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.